Final Fantasy XVI is the most beautiful, breathtaking series of horrendously boring fetch quests in video game history. Let me explain. There is so much to love about Final Fantasy XVI. Its incredible soundtrack, mind-blowing icon fights, an incredible protagonist, and a relatively interesting storyline.
Find out if this man's responsible and kill yourself if he's not.
But the game isn't perfect. Despite the other general criticism the game has received, there is one in particular that struck a chord with me. It's a single design choice that made the bulk of the game quite unenjoyable, hurting both the game's story and replayability. And that is none other than the incredibly poor design choice to replicate the fetch quest design commonly seen in MMOs for both Final Fantasy XVI's side and main storyline quests. No doubt thanks to Naoki Yoshida, the producer of both Final Fantasy XVI and one of the most actively played MMOs of today's generation, Final Fantasy XIV. Despite many moments of pure joy in Final Fantasy XVI, its quest and MMO-like structure turned what could have been a cinematic masterpiece into a somewhat boring overall experience. Let's look at how. But first, this video will spoil major plot points. Please only continue if you've completed the game. Side quests in video games provide the perfect opportunity to immerse the player in the game's world, deepen the lore, and give side characters and NPCs the chance to shine. It's a pivotal game mechanic that can break or make the player's connection to the story. But from the very get-go, Final Fantasy XVI sets the bar as low as possible when it comes to its side quests. I was almost insulted when the first lot of them had me delivering food to tables a 3-second walk away. And from there, the formula of side quests remains mostly the same. Speak to person A, then speak to person B, then maybe go kill some monsters and collect items in location C, come back and do it all again. And your reward for completing these life-draining fetch quests? Some crafting materials you'll never use and a worthless amount of gil. Not only are the side quests repetitive and boring, most of them don't offer any meaningful dialogue or the world building you'd expect, making them almost meaningless. Helping the local blacksmith forge a knife or getting cloth for a seamstress just isn't worth putting a pause on saving the world. And what makes this problem worse is the overwhelming volume of side quests. With 76 of them, it's obvious quantity was favoured over quality, making them very repetitive very quickly. There's also more side quests than main storyline quests, which is fitting for an MMO, but perhaps not for what is meant to be a story-driven JRPG. Which is a tragedy because sprinkled throughout is the occasional fantastic side quest that is both incredibly well written and value-adding to the game's characters, story, and world building. Two that particularly stood out are the quests just after Northreach that really bring to life the insidious and cruel discrimination that bearers have to endure, a core plot point of the game.
The Crystal's Curse.
And through these quests, we get to see Clive's hatred for the brutalities bearers face and complete lack of remorse for those that contribute to it. Sadly, these quests are just too far and few in between. It wouldn't be as hurtful if this awful fetch quest structure was limited only to Final Fantasy XVI's skippable side quests. But it's when the poorly hidden fetch quests find their way into the main storyline that the consequences of the game's design start to really shine. In true MMO fashion, the game's main storyline also follows a quest structure. While this isn't unusual in JRPGs, what is unusual is how structured and generic some of these quests can be and how it ruins everything in between the game's high points. With Square Enix completely cognizant of the fans' outrage to a lack of towns in Final Fantasy XIII, Final Fantasy XVI made sure to include more than enough. But what fun is exploring a town when the only way to advance the storyline is to talk to specific NPCs in a very specific order, one after the other. There's no wandering into an area where essential story developments take place. Instead, you're guided by an unremovable red marker telling you exactly where to go and who to talk to. From there, you'll speak to the next person, and then the next person, and then the next person, until the story finally lets you proceed. There's little enjoyment from solving each town's crisis when it's done so in a very guided fetch quest format. Each and every town is like this, and it turns exploration into a chore, rather than an enjoyable exploration of the game's gorgeous scenery. This horrendous quest structure isn't only used to guide exploration, but is deliberately used to poorly pace the game and pointlessly extend its length. There's one point in the game that slaps you in the face with it. After the highs of taking down Hugo Kupka, I'm not sure why the producers thought that 3 of the most dull, consecutive fetch quests to break things up would be kindly welcomed by players. Not only are Mid's fetch quests the perfect example of poor game design, but also poor quest design. If Mid needs 3 things to be collected from 3 different areas, why couldn't it all have been bundled up into a single quest, rather than force players to go back and forth numerous times? A lot of Final Fantasy XVI's main quests are similar in that so much of the player's time is soaked up in walking back to NPCs in the Hideaway and the towns to progress quests, rather than more natural progression. It extends the playtime of the game with pointless gameplay, tarnishing my desire to want to replay it. Finally, the quest mechanics' worst impact to the game was how unnatural it made the unfolding of key story developments and character dialogue, especially in the game's second half. The worst example of this is how Clive shares the news of the end of Hugo Kupka, the villain who trampled on the lives and dreams of those taking refuge in the Hideaway. Rather than a cutscene to celebrate Clive's victory and the end to living in fear for those in the Hideaway, the news is instead delivered in the same rudimentary fetch quest format, one person at a time.
Oh my.
All the incredible adrenaline from one of the greatest boss battles in video game history is quickly lost to the game's generic formula. This occurs after every key milestone, taking away the excitement from seeing Clive get closer and closer to him achieving Cid's dream of destroying all of the Mother Crystals. Playing Final Fantasy XVI is akin to being at a theme park. There's lots of long and dull wait times before hits of pure adrenaline and excitement. The MMO-style progression of its story is unnatural, and its side quest only pad the game out with filler and boredom. Final Fantasy XVI could have been incredible throughout if it had instead focused on making the story progression feel more natural and exciting, rather than a series of fetch quests glued together.
I'm sorry.
Removing all the weaker side quests and instead spreading out the few good side quests throughout the story would have made for a much more enjoyable and complete experience. I'd love to know your thoughts on Final Fantasy XVI, and if the quest-like structure bothered you as much as it did me. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up and a subscription to my channel. Thank you.